Hi everyone, in this lesson we're going to be looking at rational expressions. And a rational expression is just a ratio of polynomials. So we're going to be looking at simplifying rational expressions and how to multiply and divide rational expressions. So a rational expression is in simplest form when its numerator and denominator are polynomials that have no common divisors. So let's look at some examples. A rational expression in simplest form could be something like x over x minus 1 or 2 over x squared plus 3. Now some examples of rational expressions not in simplest form, say x over x squared, that could be simplified further. 1 over x all divided by x plus 1, that could be simplified further. Or maybe we have something like 2 times x minus 3 over 3 times x minus 3. So all of these guys could be simplified further. So we're going to be simplifying rational expressions, and then we're going to be stating any restrictions on the variable. So what do we mean by that? We're talking about anything that would make our denominator 0 would be a restriction on the variable, because as you know, we cannot have a 0 in the denominator. So first of all, we're going to factor the numerator and the denominator. We need two numbers that multiply to 25 and add to 10 for the numerator. And we need two numbers that multiply to 20 and add to 9 for the denominator. Now, before we simplify, we want to look at what is a possible restriction, because we can't just simplify and then evaluate restrictions. So if you notice, for the denominator, we have x plus 4 here. So if we set that equal to 0, we would get a restriction at -4. So if we put -4 in, that would cause the denominator to be 0. Or if we put -5 in, that would cause the denominator to be 0. So those are the two restrictions for letter A. And now we can go ahead and simplify. So we can cancel x plus 5 and x plus 5 because it occurs in both the numerator and the denominator. And then we're going to end up with x plus 5 over x plus 4. So we've stated our restrictions and we've simplified the rational expression. All right, let's try letter B. So first of all, I am going to write out all the x's. I have x to the third and I have x to the fourth, so I'm going to clean that up. Now, before we simplify, we're going to look at the restrictions. So if I let x equal 0, that would cause the denominator to be equal to 0, so x can equal 0. And if I set y equal to 0, again, that would cause the denominator to be 0. So y cannot equal 0. That's two restrictions then that we have on this particular problem. Now we can go ahead and simplify it. Well, -9 divided into -27 is just going to give me -3. And then let's cross off anything that will cancel out. So these x's go away, these x's, and these y's. And that only leaves us with an x in the denominator. So the simplified expression here would be -3 over x. All right, moving on to letter C. At this point, I would pause the video and I would try to do C and D on your own and then come back when you're ready. In the numerator, we're going to factor out the GCF. You could pull out a 3 or a -3. I'm going to pull out a -3. In the denominator, I'm going to factor two numbers that multiply to 8 but add to -6. That's going to be x minus 4 and x minus 2. Okay, now I can't go any further with simplifying this. So we already were completely simplified. Right, so we're going to circle that. And now we just need to take notice of any restrictions. So in this case, x cannot equal 4 and it cannot equal 2 because that would cause a 0 in the denominator. All right, moving on to letter D. We're going to factor the numerator and the denominator. Before we simplify, we're going to notice the restrictions that occur in the denominator. So we know that x cannot equal 3 and x cannot equal 2. Now we can go ahead and simplify. Okay, moving on. We're going to take a look at multiplying rational expressions. We're also going to continue to look at restrictions on the expression. So just like previously, we want to factor everything and take a look at it, look at the restrictions, and then simplify after that. So let's go ahead and factor first. All right, now some of you may have had some trouble factoring that first one there. So I'm going to show you off to the side how I would approach that. There's many different methods for doing this. You can do it whatever way makes you happy. I use something called the Kung Fu trick. It's also referred to as the rainbow method. All right, first thing you do is you make a rainbow. 2 times 3 is 6. And we're going to bring down the x squared, leave the 2 there, bring down the 7x, and then put that 6 on the end. Go ahead and factor that. Here's where the trick comes into play. We're going to take that 2 that we ignored. We're going to divide it into our binomials, and we're going to simplify. So we get x plus 3. And this 1/2 doesn't simplify, so we're just going to bring that 2 in front of the x, and we get 2x plus 1. All right, now we're going to take a look at the restrictions. X cannot equal 4 because of this guy. X cannot equal -5 because of this guy. And x cannot equal -3 because of this guy. Now we can cross off anything that's the same in the numerator and the denominator. So we have x plus 3, x plus 3. We have x minus 4, x minus 4. And now we're going to write out what's left. So we have 2x plus 1, x plus 4, divided by x plus 5. So our restrictions are taken care of here, and our multiplication and simplification are taken care of here. All right, go ahead and try B and C, and when you're ready, come back and watch the recording. First thing we're going to do is factor. I'm going to factor this 3x squared plus 5x minus 2 off to the side here. Do the rainbow. Rewrite it. Put the -6 on the end. Factor that. Now we're going to apply the trick. We're going to divide by 3. Because our leading coefficient was originally 3, we're going to simplify. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and then the 3 you're just going to bring in front, so you get 3x minus 1. All right, so I'm going to write that up here, 3x minus 1, x plus 2. Nothing changed in the denominator. We have the difference of 2 squares. X squared minus 25 is the difference of 2 squares, and you always want to recognize that. That'll make things much easier for you. Right? And then we're going to factor the denominator. I'll do my trick. 3x squared minus 7x plus 2. Make your rainbow. Rewrite it. Factor that easier quadratic. Now we're going to apply the trick. Divide by 3. We end up with x minus 2, 3x minus 1. Now at this point we're going to look at our restrictions. X cannot equal 5 because of this guy. X cannot equal 2 because of this. And x cannot equal 1/3 because of the 3x minus 1. If we set 3x minus 1 equal to 0, we'll get a third. So those are our restrictions. Now we'll cancel out anything that is the same in the numerator and the denominator. So it looks like 3x minus 1. All right, and then this should be minus 5. X squared minus 25 is x minus 5 times x plus 5. Sorry about that, made a little mistake there. Cross this off, cross this off. Now we can go ahead and write the final expression. We get x plus 2, x plus 5 over x minus 2. All right, moving on to letter C. Factor everything. We have the difference of 2 squares. In both the numerator and the denominator, we have the difference of 2 squares. We're going to pull out the GCF in the denominator of this second part here. There's an A we can pull out. If you're not sure if you did it right, you'd say A times A is A squared, and A times 2 is 2A, so we know we did it right. We're going to find our restrictions. A does not equal 1 because of that. A does not equal negative 1 because of that. A does not equal 0 because we have just this A all by itself here, so A does not equal 0. And then A cannot equal negative 2 because of this A plus 2 here. So those are our restrictions. Okay, we're going to cancel out anything that's like terms. And we're left with A minus 2 over A times A minus 1. Okay, moving on to the next page. All right, here's where it gets a little tricky with the restrictions. First of all, let's talk about when we're dividing fractions. So if I have, let's say I have A over B divided by C over D. Well, when we divide by a fraction, that's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So we do A over B becomes D over C. Well, guess what? We had B in the denominator, we had D in the denominator, and now we also have C in the denominator. So all of those parts of our expression need to be considered when we look at the restrictions, all right? So it's going to basically be everything that is in the second part of these expressions and everything that would be in the denominator of the first part. All right, so let's first of all identify the restrictions for this. This is already factored, thankfully. So we're going to have a restriction at x equals 4. Right? Because of this, which eventually is going to end up in the denominator, we're going to have a restriction at x equals negative 2/3. Because of this, we're going to have a restriction at x equals 2, because we have this and this. And we're going to have a restriction at y equal to 5/7. It should be not equal, y does not equal 5/7. Right, so all of our restrictions occur then at x does not equal 4, negative 2/3 and 2, and y does not equal 5/7. All right, so taking care of all of that. Now the next step is going to be to write the reciprocal of this guy. So we have 4 minus x, we have 3x plus 2, x minus 2, we're just rewriting the first part. And then we're going to multiply by the reciprocal before we cancel things out to see if anything can, go away, be removed. Now there is one little sneaky thing that's showing up here. We've got this x minus 4, which looks really similar to this. I could rewrite 4 minus x if I pull a negative out. So let's try to do that. Stay with me here. This is a little tricky. I'm going to pull a negative out, which means I'm going to end up with a negative 4 plus x. Negative 4 plus x. Now, these are the same, and I can cancel that out. Because think about it. Negative times negative 4 gives me positive 4. Negative times positive x gives me negative x. All right, so now I can cross off this and this. And the x minus 2's can go away. And all I'm going to be left with, I still have this negative out here. Right? I still have this 7y minus 5. I have the 3x plus 2 and the 5. So let's write that out. And that would be my final simplified answer. There was a lot in that problem. You may want to pause the video, rewind, and watch that again. All right, let's take a look at the next one. So remember now, we've got to put restrictions on the numerator and the denominator of the second part of this because we're doing division, and the denominator of the first part. So let's write down all the restrictions. Thankfully, this is already factored. So we're going to have a restriction at y equals 3. So y cannot equal 3. We're going to have a restriction at x cannot equal 1/2. And that actually takes care of this and this. And then we're going to have a restriction at negative 5 because of this. And then we're going to have a restriction at 7 because of this. So we've got restrictions where y cannot equal 3 and x cannot equal 1/2, negative 5, and 7. Now we can continue on. So we're going to write the first part the same. Now we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, because when we divide fractions, we can multiply by the reciprocal. And we have that same sort of sneaky scenario here, where if we pull a negative out, we could get y minus 3, and we'd be able to cancel these terms. So let's go ahead and pull that negative out. Let's rewrite it. It's going to be negative 3 plus y. So now these two are the same. We just pulled a negative out front. So those would cancel. And these would cancel. And we're going to be left with this negative x minus 7, this 6, and x plus 5. Okay, last one here. First, we're going to factor, because this one unfortunately is not factored, so let's go ahead and do that first. All right, so we're all factored. Before we do anything, we're going to look at our restrictions. Remember, our restrictions are going to occur here, here, and here. All right, so our restrictions are a cannot equal -4 because of this. A cannot equal +4 because of this or this. And a cannot equal -1 because of this. All right, now we're going to rewrite it where we multiply by the reciprocal. Now we're going to cancel out any like terms that we have. Looks like that's all that we have. And we'll just write our final simplified expression. So the final answer here is 3 times a plus 5 times a minus 3 divided by a plus 1 times a plus 4. All right, that's all I have for this lesson. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.